I'm Maria Miles, the board secretary for the Hellenic Film Society and an entertainment attorney. In conversation today, we welcome Stavroula Toska. Stavroula is a multi-award-winning writer, director, producer, and actress, known for pushing boundaries through her unique perspective and unconventional storytelling. Her works have received global recognition, including multiple top honors from New York Women in Film and Television and film festivals around the world. Her works are available on Apple TV, Amazon Prime Video, Roku, Fixa TV, Vimeo, and various other platforms. She's collaborated with many industry veterans, including Academy and Golden Globe Award winner Olympia Dukakis, Harris Yulin, Frankie Faison, Teddy Sears, Emmy winner Katie McLean, and many more. Stavroula serves as a mentor for underserved youth at RealWorks, is on the board of Film Fatales, and advocates for survivors of domestic violence. She's a published author currently working on her first book. And most importantly, Stavroula is a former Hellenic Film Society board member and our very good friend. We hope you enjoy it, and welcome, Stavroula.
Thank you for such a wonderful introduction, Maria. I would say that I'm actually a very proud former member of the board of directors of the Hellenic Film Society. And I'm so excited about what the Hellenic Film Society has organized for the month of March, especially under these circumstances where most of us are still locked inside, more or less. And it's just, it's so wonderful to see the variety of films you have put together. And I can't wait for the series to launch.
Well, we're very excited for it, and we hope everyone enjoys it. But let's get started with some questions about this wonderful documentary called Beneath the Olive Tree that you directed, you produced, and co-wrote, correct?
Correct, yes.
So many hats.
Many hats, and I enjoyed all of them because it was the first time that I was stepping behind the camera during a time in my life where I had completely given up on having a career in the entertainment industry. And then Olympia Dukakis comes into my life and everything changes. So all these years later, we're still talking about Beneath the Olive Tree, a project that really changed my life and my relationship with my family forever. And it's just, I gotta say, it's just such an honor that you guys are screening at the Hellenic Film Society Beneath the Olive Tree. And I'm so grateful to you that you create this opportunity for our audience to watch the film.
It's fantastic. It really took me aback. So March is International Women's History Month. And this March particularly, we Greeks celebrate 200 years of Greek independence. Your documentary intersects women's history and Greek history by exploring the stories of women prisoners during the Greek Civil War. What made you tell this exact story?
Yeah, so I mentioned Olympia already because she's also an executive producer and the narrator of Beneath the Olive Tree. I was born and raised in Greece, and I wasn't, I had no idea. I knew very little about the Civil War, but more specifically, I had no idea about the role that Greek women played, not only during the Civil War and later on the military dictatorship, but during World War II as well. It's not something that we're taught in school, and it's not something that we hear about in family conversations, right? So Olympia approached me because she knew I wanted to go back to my roots and I wanted to tell stories that were meaningful to me. And I was looking for material at the time and felt a bit lost in the process. And she handed me a book one evening. We had gone out to dinner and we were talking about my family, her roots, her family. She handed me a book that was written by Eleni Fortouni, and it was called Greek Women in Resistance. And that was the first time that I became aware of the stories of the women who fought during World War II and then later on were prosecuted by their own people during the Civil War. So the fact that I knew nothing about the role that Greek women had played back then, nothing about concentration camps on Greek islands. I knew nothing about the thousands and thousands of lives that were destroyed simply because they dared to speak up against the fascist regime. So this almost erasing of this part of our history and the struggles of these women was pretty much what set me off on my journey to get to know them and honor them and celebrate their struggles, instead of putting it to the side and end up making Beneath the Olive Tree.
It really blew me away. Learning that there were concentration camps in Greece
Yeah.
was staggering to me, staggering, upsetting, all of it.
Yeah, and in those islands that so many of us visit, actually, I mean, Chios Island, had prisons, and it served as a concentration camp during the Civil War. Makronissos, which is not an island that people visit anymore, except the people who fought back then and are still alive, and they go once a year on sort of a pilgrimage to just pay tribute to the dead. Then Trickery Island, which the first time that I visited, I was so surprised to see how many. It was the month of June in 2010, so it was already summertime, and we went to the taverna, the main taverna on the island, and I was amazed to hear all these Russians speaking, at tables near us, and then German, hearing people speak German. And these are all people who own homes on these islands and know the history much better than most of us do.
Amazing, amazing. And
Yeah.
to know that many women were arrested and detained and held in these camps or in prisons
Yeah.
without doing anything really.
No.
And they simply didn't want to admit and falsely admit, I should say, to a crime they never committed.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is extraordinary. Correct. So how did you find them? How did you find the participants for this documentary?
It was incredible, because I didn't know where to start in the beginning. And then I went online and I made research. Olympia was the one actually who encouraged me and kept on pushing me. You'll find them. If you're meant to tell this story, you will find the women. Just keep researching and keep asking. So I just went online one day and I Googled something along the lines, Greek women, political exiles, concentration camps, Greek islands. And many results came up, and mostly, work and research that has been done by people outside of Greece, by scholars and historians and all sorts of folks who have written about this period outside of Greece. But I came across the Association of Women Political Exiles of the Civil War, and there was a phone number, and I called that phone number, and I like when somebody answered, I just wanted to cry. I was, choking up already because I was so emotional. Zozo Petroulaki, who is in the documentary and unfortunately passed away about 2 years ago, she was the president of this association. And she told me that they were preparing to go for their annual trip to Trickery to pay tribute to the dead, and that anybody has the right to join them. I could bring a camera and a mic, and that's about it. But she couldn't guarantee that any of the women would be willing to speak with me, because in the past they have given interviews, and oftentimes their words were taken out of context and twisted, and that created issues for them with their children, grandchildren, and they just didn't care to talk about it anymore. So Sofia Antonini, my partner on this project, and I just got on a plane with the cheapest tripod we could afford and a little camera. At the time, we didn't have the ability to shoot on our phones a whole documentary and whatnot. But we just had this passion for the story. And for me as a Greek woman, I really wanted to see these women in person and meet with them and talk to them, thinking that maybe I'll take some of the stories they'd be willing to share with me and write a script based on true events. And then we got on the island, and after we were there for like a day or two, we gained their trust. And I specifically, the ones who resisted in speaking with me, I specifically told them that I respect the reasons behind their decision, but also how do they expect us, the younger generations, to really take an interest in what happened if they, the last survivors of that period pretty much, are not willing to open up and talk. So then I started rolling the camera, Sophia and I, and asked them questions, and I completely fell in love with their spirit and their passion to this day. And that's how the documentary came to be. I just wanted the world to get to see these women as they were, instead of just writing a script about it and hiring actors to play the roles.
You did a tremendous service to these women, to history, for Greeks to understand our history and not repeat the behavior. So I'm going to touch on a little bit more sensitive of a topic, but I was stunned when the story took an unexpected turn. What has the revelation that your grandmother was imprisoned during the Civil War meant for your understanding of your family, your mother, your grandmother, the family dynamics? How has that changed things for you?
Yeah, it's a loaded question because all these years later, I mean, we started filming this documentary in 2010. It came out to festivals 5 or 6 years later, and just last year it came out. It became available to an audience around the world. But to this day, I'm processing things with my mother, and things come up, especially when I call her, because my family's not in New York, they're back in Greece. Especially when I call my mom and she's in a good mood, and I try to, sneak in a question here and there, and find out more about the family and what happened back then. It's still very emotional, and she's still traumatized, even though she's in her 80s already. My grandmother, I don't want to give away too much, but for the people who will hopefully watch the documentary, you'll see my personal story unraveling throughout the documentary, even though I want to go on record and say, when I first started doing research for this project, and for the first couple of years of going to Greece and filming with these women, I had no idea that my family had any involvement in the Civil War, and that what happened to my grandmother and how that torn that whole family apart. And unfortunately, my family wasn't an exception to the rule. That was the rule back then. You had to take one side or you had to take another side. And quite often you had members of the same family, fighting for the government and Churchill and what he wanted to do in Greece, or against the government and Churchill. So there's a lot of trauma, and there's a lot of things that I was able to understand on a much deeper level as to why my mother is who she is, as to why she raised me, her only daughter, the way she did. And then how the years that her mother had been taken away and the reasons why pretty much broke the family down to a degree that I don't know if they ever truly recovered. Um, yeah, and you see that with a lot of families in Greece to this day. Um, and there's still a lot of families that keep those secrets from one another. I mean, I had to argue with my mother at some point and tell her that if you're not willing to share this part of our family's history with me, which I believed I had every right to know, then what's the point? Like, what's the point of me? I keep visiting and I keep seeing you, and it's like it's all in the surface. I have no idea at what's really boiling inside you, what's happening behind the surface. So that was extremely important for me. And as a result, of course, I was thinking that me, I want to know, I have a right to know, not fully understanding how traumatized she was, because I didn't know what had happened. And how heartbreaking it was for her to share these stories and bring the past into the present. But then again, as a result, our relationship has gotten much closer and much stronger. And I have learned, as a daughter who wanted to go and live in another country and build a life in a whole other country, I have been able to connect with her as a result of the work that we did through this documentary on a much deeper level. And that to me is priceless. And I wish that on everybody.
Unexpected surprise, but definitely a healing time for your family. Mm-hmm. And even though you didn't even know the wound was there, you could tell something was off.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's truly wonderful. Yeah. And I think it exemplifies many of our family members, our grandparents who survived the Civil War, of course, but also World War II. They didn't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about what their experiences during the war, but it's important that we learn and we know and we hear the stories. And so I commend you for approaching that part so authentically and transparently for the audience, because it was a very difficult part of the film for your family.
Yeah, it was. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate you saying this. And it's interesting with, the Greeks, our people. We want to sort of swipe things under the rag. And then you have, for example, the Jewish community or so many other communities that have gone through war after war, and how they see the importance of writing as many books as possible, creating courses in universities that focus on that specific community in a specific era. Making sure that the history is passed on from one generation to the next, and we're getting there step by step, but we're not there yet. So I hope anybody who's watching this and anybody who's going to watch the documentary, I really hope that it starts a conversation within the family as to where was our family back then, what did we do, or how did we handle the situation, because knowledge is power, and there's nothing more important than opening up in order to just build that bond and make it even stronger.
It's absolutely an opportunity to learn. That brings us to my next question. So I was quite surprised to learn that Greek history books taught to college students and high school students today in Greece really gloss over the events of the Civil War. Yeah. Do you know if your film has been used in academia to maybe bolster this area that isn't so much addressed in the textbooks?
Yeah, it's interesting because this was always something in the back of my mind. Once the film was completed and we first started doing screenings in film festivals based in the US, and seeing the response that the film was receiving, thankfully, from an American audience who were like, well, we've been to Greece on this island, and we've been to the Parthenon, but we knew nothing about XYZ. And then seeing how the film was honored, the next thing on my mind was, we have to somehow figure out a way to take this to Greece, and show it, to people, and show it to the younger generations, and open a dialogue. And through some ups and downs of, dealing with indie film distribution, we were not able to do that. But last year, my partner Sophia and I, we got the rights back to the film. And thus we were able to actually put it online, and pretty quickly it just, caught the attention of people in Greece. And in the process, as we're doing this interview, I'm also in the process of speaking with a group of female scholars in Greece from the University of the Aegean, Panepistimio του Αιγαίου, and a couple of other universities who are now teaching gender studies and are very, very interested in what happened during the Civil War in Greece, and more particularly what happened with the women involved in the Civil War in Greece. So we're in the process of actually putting the film out there for Greek universities and for a younger generation to hear the testimonies of these women.
You should be so proud.
I'm excited because, again, for anybody who's going to watch the film and they'll get to know these women, they'll understand exactly why I'm so excited. And yes, I'm proud of the work that we've done, even though it was a first effort for me to, direct a documentary and tell this story. So half the time I feel like I look back now and I'm like, half the time I had no idea what I was doing. But actually, I'm glad that I didn't know. So instead of this being a, uber stylized documentary of the Greek islands and women and their traumatic stories, is actually very authentic, like you said, and genuine storytelling. So I think that people are just really going to enjoy and be moved by the film. And that's something that, yes, I'm very proud of.
And your relationship with them was great. It was just great. And of course, the Greek spirit of constantly feeding someone.
It was incredible. Sophia is an Italian-American girl. And we were like, listen, we're very tight with money, but we have to go to Greece and we have to find these women now, June 2010. We don't know if they're going to be around next year, because the women in the film are already in their 80s when we met them 10, 11 years ago, and they were teenagers in the camps. So they literally are the last of the last that have survived. So to be able to end up getting that access to them and to have them on camera. And of course, I had many more interviews that didn't make the final cut, didn't make the documentary. So the other thing is that I'm hoping that I can find an archive, preferably in Greece, that can become the home of these interviews for anybody who wants to do research on this era and on the women. But we were on a very tight budget with my partner, and like, this is how much we can afford. And I was like, maybe once a week we can have a souvlaki, in Greece. But other than that, But then these women, after we met on the island, and they started feeling comfortable, they asked us how long we were going to be there. We said it was a quick trip, just a couple of weeks, but we would want to go back. And they offered to host us. Every time we went to their home to do an interview, even though we were there for a couple of hours, it felt like we got breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a couple of snacks.
You did.
We did. We did. But this is the Greek spirit of hospitality and
Philoxenia.
Philoxenia and the philotimo. I've traveled, I've been really blessed with my work and, to travel in many places around the world. And, you feel welcomed in certain parts of the world, but there's something about us Greeks that you don't find it too often. And that philoxenia that you said, yeah, it's priceless.
So let's talk about you a little bit. You are an absolute triple threat. You're a writer, a director, a producer, an actor, so quadruple threat. Which one of these hats do you prefer wearing?
That's a good question. I almost preferred it when we talked about the women.
Sorry.
No, not at all. Thank you, Mary. I would say the writer, because everything starts on a page. I love being on set, behind the camera, putting everything together and directing. Now that I've done some scripted stuff as well, I absolutely love it. But if you don't have that, an outline or a concept for a documentary or a script, on the page, there's really not much you can go do unless you want to just pick up your camera and start filming people in the streets, which nothing wrong with that. But I would say that, writing and creating is my, it's my number one.
And I mean, you do it very well.
Thank you.
And so it's a little hard to make you choose a baby, I know, but I think, and you're right, it always starts with the script.
Yeah.
And if the script isn't solid, everything else falls apart.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah. But and then the thing about, choosing a baby, it's so interesting because, as a female filmmaker, I would hear that a lot, right? As women, we constantly have to choose one or the other, work or home or career or raising babies or whatever. And I feel like for me, when I'm very emotionally invested in the work that I do, otherwise it's just not worth it for me. But when I started being able, you asked me about the producing and directing, looking at things as a writer and as a creative and emotional person with a lot of ideas and feelings and whatnot. But then looking at the work as a producer always helps me detach a little bit and be very pragmatic and realistic, whether it's going to be, budgets or, the potential of the project in the US market, in the international market. So I say this because, not seeing the work as a baby, which we say all the time, and I use that expression a lot, and actually being a little bit more pragmatic about it and being able to separate, work, your passion project from the business, has served me really well, has helped me a lot. So I just wanted to share that in case any of creators and filmmakers up and coming or already up there are watching.
So you indulge your creative needs while also being realistic and tampering them, perhaps, or dampening them a little bit with the practicality. So no big bridge explosions, no aliens.
No, nothing yet. We're keeping things down to planet Earth for the time being. Yeah.
So what are you working on and where can we find your work?
I am writing a book. I've published a couple of things that I've written in the past, but never a book. So this is my first big project. You can see all of my work, everything that I've produced so far. I'm very thankful to be able to say this because not every filmmaker can say that, unfortunately. It's out there for people to watch for free or to rent or to purchase. So if you go to my website, www.thetoscamatrix.com, you will be able to just find where the work is on Apple TV or Roku, Vimeo on demand, on social media, and people can just email me directly if they wish through the website, and I'll be more than happy to let them know where they can find each project. But visit thetoscamatrix.com and all the information is there.
Well, okay. Well, It was a pleasure to have you speak to us today.
Again, I'm so honored and I'm thankful that the Hellenic Film Society has given me and my team yet another opportunity to present this project to the world through your platform that I know reaches people all around America and all around the world at this point. So I'm very thankful for this opportunity and just excited to watch the rest of the films actually that you have lined up. Everything seems to be pretty on point for what we're celebrating this month and looking back to Greece's history from 1821 all the way to present day, pretty much.
We're very excited. We've got pre-1821, in fact.
Oh, nice.
We go back to the ancients all through modern day. So it's a retrospect, if you will.
Excellent.
But I also want to thank our viewers for sharing this time with us. If you like what you saw, please visit us at www.hellenicfilmusa.org to subscribe to our mailing list and learn more about what we offer. You can also visit our YouTube channel to watch a wide variety of Greek films and other conversations with filmmakers. And finally, please follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for joining us for this very special celebration of Greek independence, and we hope you enjoy our film selections this month. Thank you, Stavroula.
Thank you, Maria. Na se kala. Thank you.